Hey everyone. Now, if you watched my recent Topics on My Mind video this past weekend, the first topic I talked about was how the IDW Sonic comic book's recent story arc, the Zombot/Infection story arc, was coming to an end in the next few weeks, mostly on July 22nd. And the reason I brought that up, as I explained at the beginning of the Topics video, the reason I brought that up is because it seems that a lot of folks, even those that review the comics here on YouTube and other platforms of social media, are actually glad it's finally ending. I mean, one person that I do follow called Mega Beatman, who does his True Blue reviews, in his own monotone vocalist way, basically sounded, in my opinion, like he was happy, he was elated, that this was finally ending, that this story arc was finally coming to an end. And I don't know if I was the only one that may have noticed that, but that's just my opinion. But if part of that is true, if not entirely true, I don't think you can blame someone like Mega Beatman, also known as Matt, outside of YouTube. I don't think you can really blame him. And the reason I say that is because, like the rest of us, myself and many other fans, like Alex the Hedgehog, or Alex Hedgehog, I should say, and many others, a lot of us have had our feel of these long-term, long stretched-out story arcs when it comes to the Sonic comics. I mean, the last time we had to deal with something like that was the Mecha Sally arc, back when the Sonic comics were under the Archie comic license. Now, I know some of you might say, well, what about the Soft Retcon reboot? You could kind of argue that's kind of in the same category, but the Soft Retcon reboot was done in a way where it felt like each story, despite how many parts it may have been, basically how many issues it may have taken to tell that part of the story, it felt like each of those stories or chapters were their own thing. Like, even though you knew it was part of one continuity, it was heading towards one goal, every story, like let's say the Sonic Universe Spark of Life 4-issue series, felt like its own thing. I mean, the endings felt like, hey, that's it for this story, now we're going to move on to something different. Even though, like I said, you knew it was contained in the same continuity, heading towards the same goal. Now, again, the reason I bring that up in comparison to the Mecha Sally arc is the Mecha Sally arc was just one constant continuity that was issue after issue after issue after issue, and it was the same goal almost issue after issue after issue, and that is to try to rescue Sally, bring her back to New Mobotropolis and restore her. And again, it was rinse and repeat every time they did that. Issue after issue was rinse and repeat. Yeah, you had some twists and turns here and there, but it was mostly rinse and repeat. And what I mean by rinse and repeat is you would have characters that didn't know about what happened to Sally encounter her in her mecha form, be shocked about what has become of her, and then go from there. It's just the same thing over and over and over again. And this would go on, believe it or not, for about 17 issues. 16 to be exact, but 17 if you count the last panel in issue 230. And that's only the main comic. When we got to Sonic Universe, and you basically add this Mecha Sally story arc to that, because it did cross over, I should say, into the Sonic Universe comic, and that too was 17 issues. You're looking primarily together combined at 34 issues. Basically 24 months plus 10 more. In other words, almost 3 years. Almost 3 years of one constant story arc that was basically the same thing over and over and over again, issue after issue, even at times spilling into the Sonic Universe comic book to help tell the story. Basically, like I said, it was issue after issue, rinse and repeat. That's why, basically, with the infection slash Zombot story arc coming to an end in the IDW comic, and basically you hear, in my opinion, fans like, let's say, Matt, aka Mega Beatman, in his True Blue reviews, and at the end of his recent review of issue 28, in his own monotone vocalist way, kind of make it known, in my opinion, that he's happy it's finally ending. You can't blame them. You can't blame them, because we've been here, we've done that, and we want to move on. But again, this goes back to when Ian Flynn came on board. Even though we were happy he had come on board, it wouldn't be until post 200 that we'd get an idea of what we were in store for. I mean, yes, leading up to the post 200 era, we kind of got a taste of what we were in store for with the Suppression Squad, Invasion and all that, you know, formerly the Anti-Evil Freedom Fighters, and Scourge, aka Evil Sonic, you know, and them taking a hostile takeover on Freedom HQ, stuff like that. We kind of got a taste there. We kind of got a taste of what we were in store for there, but we wouldn't get the full course meal. Easy for me to say. We wouldn't get the full course meal until post 200, starting with issue 201. Like I said, we wouldn't get that full course meal until post 200. And that started with the Iron Dominion arc, which ran from 211 to about 212, which is about a year. And then you add in 4 issues of Sonic Universe that tied into it, called Journey to the West. And you're basically looking at, ladies and gentlemen, 15 to 16 issues worth of one story. Mainly a year and a half of one story being told in the span of a year. A year and a half story being told in the span of a year. And it takes 2 comics to tell it. Or at least, you know, a majority of the main comic, and then of course the spin-off comic Sonic Universe to help finish it off, or kind of, you know, fill in the gaps that were missing if you didn't read, you know, that part of the story or something like that. Basically, Journey to the West was where you had Sally, Sonic, Monkey Kong, and Tails go off to the West to kind of get the brides of the 4 houses to disband away from the Iron Queen, who they were trying to establish as a new villain, but it didn't seem to work, because I don't think Sega was cool with, oh, so you're gonna put Eggman in the rubber room, the nut house, and you're gonna put this female villain that nobody really knows about as the new main villain. Not on our watch. And that too should have been a sign of the fact that no matter how we felt about this, Sega would have the final call. And that would also apply to the Mecha Sally arc as to why it went through all the changes it did instead of staying true to what it was originally meant to be. Now, again, I bring all this up because with the Infection slash Zombot story arc coming to an end in a few weeks, it basically marks the end, even though there's going to be some epilogue issues to kind of really tie things up, you know, taking place afterwards. It really marks the end of what many could consider the third longest Sonic story arc in the history of the Sonic comics, between both Archie and IDW. It brings to an end the 3rd longest one. Of course, like I said, the one that is just barely above it, of course, is the Iron Dominion arc. And the one that's above that takes the cake, is of course the Mecha Sally arc. And again, I bring all this up, as crazy and as rambling as it may sound. I bring all this up because, like I said, if you listen towards the end of Mega Beatman's True Blue reviews on issue 28 of the IDW Sonic book, you can kind of tell, in my opinion, in his own monotone vocalist way, that he's kind of happy it's ending. Like, finally, we're bringing this story arc to an end and we can move on. I mean, I'm sure he knows there's going to be some epilogue issues that take place afterwards to kind of help tie things up, like I said. But again, just like a lot of fans, he's glad it's finally ending. Now, for me, I haven't really read the IDW comics that much, but thanks to a friend here on YouTube and social media, Frank Hill, aka It's Frank, I have 4 trade paperback / graphic novels of the first, I would assume, 16 issues of the IDW Sonic book, and I know there's a 5th one already out that contains issues 17, 18, 19, and 20 that I could read and help me catch up on what's going on, so maybe I'll have a change of mind. But like I said, a lot of people are happy, it seems, in my opinion, that this is ending. I mean, I'm sure if you would have asked someone like Alex Hedgehog or Nintendo Dude or R Raccoon, I'm just going to call him R Raccoon, I can't pronounce his first name, on social media as well, they'd probably tell you the same thing. Even Mega Beatman would probably be like, yeah, I'm finally glad this is ending. Because look, nothing against doing epic story arcs, but a lot of fans that have been following the Sonic comics for a long time, between both Archie comics and even IDW, heck, even Fleetway, if you want to throw that one in there, were all used to shorter story arcs, were used to the shorter 3-part, 4-part story arcs, maybe even 6-part at the most. Were used to them because of the fact that they don't span a whole year's worth of comic and rely on maybe a spin-off comic to help finish it up or fill in the gaps. But again, going back to Ian Flynn, post 200, we basically got the idea of what Ian Flynn was truly a fan of. And it seems what Ian Flynn was truly a fan of was those long, lengthy story arcs that would go on for about a year and have to rely, as I mentioned, on spin-off books to kind of help fill in the gaps. Even Linkara, Louis Lovehog, who's the host of Atop the Fourth Wall, when he does reviews, and he mentions this in some of the reviews he does on events, on several event books, like, he's doing Events Month right now. So for the next few weeks, like last week, he's going to be doing multi-part reviews on several event storylines that have taken place or been published by various publishers throughout the years. Major ones, that is. Well, even Linkara has brought up the fact that you would have to look into different issues to fill in the gaps when it comes to these certain event comics. Like when he talked about 0 Hour last week, he talked about the fact that there were several issues that took place in between that you'd have to read to fill in the gaps. And you could tell that Linkara, even though he's a fan of comic books and he does this for a living, you can tell that Linkara is not a fan of the whole, oh, you want to get the full context? Go read this issue of this comic. That doesn't work. You should let those comics be their own thing, not rely on them to help fill in the gaps. And that's kind of what Ian Flynn was doing. Or we kind of had an idea of what Ian Flynn was going to do when he came with the Iron Dominion arc, when he came later on with the Mecha Sally arc. Heck, even with this, even though they felt more contained in their own, and they felt like they were their own personal stories, even at times the Sonic Universe spin-off was used to help tie in the books. I mean, when we got to Panic in the Sky, here, it took a Sonic Universe book to fill in the gaps of where Amy Rose was the whole time in that finale. And the reason it had to do that was to show us that Amy Rose was with Knuckles and a few others trying to retrieve one last Chaos Emerald or something to help save the world. The point is, if you want to use a spin-off book to help fill in the gaps, fine, more power to you, go ahead and do it, but make sure the main story arc in the main book is 4 to 6 issues long, not a whole year's worth. Because people will basically start feeling worn out. They'll basically feel like, okay, enough already. Because like I said, we had, even though it's been 4 years almost about 4 years now, a lot of us are still getting off the whole Mecha Sally, the whole, what is it? Yeah, 4 years, 7 years, whatever. Even 4 to 7 years, we'll put it that way. Even though it's been between 4 to 7 years, a lot of us are still getting our breath back. A lot of us are still kind of getting off that long ride of the Mecha Sally arc. And depending on how you feel about this, the reboot, the soft reboot, a lot of us are still getting off of that. So when it comes to doing a story arc that is going to span a long time, enough is enough. Especially if that story arc is just rinse and repeat. Rinse and repeat. Eat over and over again. You know, like I said with the Mecha Sally arc, it was basically issue after issue. It was, characters that don't know about what happened to Sally, see what's happened to her, are in shock. Here comes Sonic and Tails and Amy to try to, get to her, take her down, to bring her back to Knothole and restore her, rinse and repeat. The same thing with the Infection / Zombot arc. It was here, it was the Resistance, and it was Sonic and the Resistance going to town, and every time they'd get to that town, they'd either be just in time or just barely too late, and all of a sudden the goop comes down, and people and all the citizens there all of a sudden are infected. There's mindless Zombots going beep beep, we destroy you, beep beep, and it's just rinse and repeat. The only thing that they tried to do to make it different is have main video game characters from the Sonic games be infected as well. Even the newest character, Tangle, got infected. But do you think Sega's going to just let that stand and be like, okay, you can infect them, and oh, by the way, when Sonic says today, you can also blow them up because they're Zombots and they can't be saved? No! Sega only lets this happen because of that one golden rule they have. And it even applied to Archie comics. And that is, Sonic always has to win. There you go. There you go. Sonic always has to win. No matter how you feel about it, when it comes to that one restriction, that one stipulation, that pretty much, in a way, spoils anything, suspenseful. Because in the end, everything's going to be all right. You know that any video game characters related to Sonic are going to be all right. So what I'm getting at is this, and I know this has been going on a little long, I do apologize, but what I'm getting at is this. If you're going to do a story arc like this, don't do it for a year, okay? Don't do it for a year and a half almost. Contain it within the span of 4 to 6 issues, 8 at most if you want to do it like that, but don't drag it on and rinse and repeat, because, everybody because a lot of people will get sick and tired of that. They'll pretty much know what's going to happen. They'll pretty much know that after a few issues, this main game character is going to get infected, Stop doing that. Stop doing that. If you're going to do it, contain it within the span of 4 to maybe 8 issues at most. Because if you keep doing it, and especially with the fact that people know that there's no way you're going to keep the characters, the video game characters or any of these characters infected for long, knowing that, Sega has that main rule, no matter who's publishing the comic, that Sonic must always win, then what's the point of doing the story arc for a year, for dragging it out? It doesn't make sense. 4 to 8 issues at 4 issues, 8 issues, 4 issues is probably the best. 4 to 6 issues, I should say, is probably the best number to do a story arc like this. 8 issues at most, if you really want to make it impactful, I think's a good limit. But a year and a half doesn't work. Especially, like I said, after people have gotten off that long ride that took place several years ago of the Mecha Sally arc, and even if you want to count it, the Brave New World soft retcon reboot arc, Panic in the Sky arc, whatever you want to call it. You know, enough is enough. I mean, with all due respect to Ian Flynn and anybody else involved, we get it. You wanted to have your magnum opus. You wanted to make up for the fact that you couldn't get it with the Mecha Sally arc, so you're doing it with this. Okay, fine. We get it. You want it. Now you got it. Please stop. Enough is enough. You want to know why people are turning against Ian Flynn in a way? It's not because he's a bad writer. It's because he doesn't know when to stop. He doesn't know when to limit a story arc on a comic based on a franchise where the characters, mainly the main character, the main hero, is never going to lose. It just boggles the mind, if you will, it just boggles the mind as to why any comic book writer, freelance writer, whatever, would want to do that. It doesn't make sense. Now, with Evan Stanley coming on board, we know Evan's a fan of long story arcs, there's no doubt. Evan's even doing their own ghost story featuring Silver on DeviantArt. We know that. But it seems that, in my opinion, from what I can tell, Evan's more of a fan of the shorter story arcs when it comes to the Sonic comics. And it seems like that's what we're going to be getting after this, hopefully. Because the two-part epilogue that cleans it up, that fills in all the gaps, is exactly that. It's two parts. Issue 30 and 31, they're just two parts. 32 is when we get the aftermath. Like, okay, now we're going to start going into a new continuity, into a new direction. So hopefully, this will be the last long-term story arc we get. But anyway, though, folks, I just thought I'd come on here and just get that off my chest a little bit. You could, if you want, I got my topics on my mind video, which you could watch the first part of that. The first topic, this is the very first topic on it. You can watch it there. But again, I just thought I'd get this off my chest. I know it sounded like I rambled a little bit. But the point is, ladies and gentlemen, enough is enough. And hopefully this Infection/Zombot story arc, which is concluding officially in a few weeks on July 22nd, will be the last time any writer of the IDW Sonic comic, plans to do a long-term story arc that's going to span a year and a half or so and just be rinse and repeat issue after issue. Because again, you want to know why sales are dropping, why people are leaving, people are turning against you? That's why. Because for those that have been fans of the book, they've been through this time and time again. Like I said, I know it's been about 4 to 7 years, but the thing is, it's still felt. People still feel it. And maybe that's what they were hoping they wouldn't feel here in the IDW books, but guess what? That's what they're getting. So, hopefully this is the last time this occurs. Because again, you go and watch True Blue reviews, Mega Beatman's True Blue reviews on issue 28, and you could tell, in my opinion, you could tell at the end, in his own vocalist way, that he's kind of glad and happy this is ending too, because I think he's getting sick and tired of the same repetitive storytelling issue after issue. Because again, we had that with the Mecha Sally arc. We don't need it here if you're trying to, take Sonic to another level in the IDW books. We don't need it here. So, with that said, though, folks, let me know what you all think down below. Again, I apologize for this video being long, but let me know what you think down below. Comment if you like. I'd love to hear from each and every one of you, and I'm out.